We have a fantastic panel here which is waiting to analyze it, to tell us what they thought of it. I mean, the last time the Prime Minister addressed the nation, it was Big Bang. This wasn't necessarily Big Bang. There are at least some on social media and others who are feeling that almost parts of it were like a budget speech almost. I'm sure Arun Jaitley is going to be wondering what he's going to say on the 1st of February whenever he starts to talk. Big themes, essentially, as was perhaps predicted earlier, did thank the country, thank the people of the country for putting up with all the pain during demonetization. And then came on and announced a series of SOPs, not Big Bang SOPs, but a series of SOPs, and we keep on putting them up for you there, essentially around housing, 6,000 rupees for pregnant women, SOPs for farmers, SOPs for small industry. So a number of those were done and we will put them up. But let me just first get a quick snap take from everyone here, and we'll get takes from a lot of people. Our reporters are there with their OBs in all corners of the country, so we will get a reaction from many people on what they made of all of this. Pawan Khera, wanted to get the Congress party and the opposition to kick off. What was your overall take?
Vikram, this was a pocket edition of the Prime Minister we know of. The bluster was missing. He was not sounding very sure-footed. In fact, Narega, as he once called, was a monument of failure of policy of 60 years. This speech was a monument of failure of demonetization. The SOPs offered, everything points to one direction. Look, he did not prove by his speech that demonetization has worked. Where was the data? RBI has stopped giving us data. In 2 weeks, RBI hasn't issued the data of how much money has come in and how much new currency notes were put in. The queues will still continue on Monday. Now, people want to know whether their problems have been solved.
Professor Arun Kumar is with us. Meher is with us as well. Ministers are going to be joining us. A lot of people are going to be joining us to take us through all of this. But I'm going to get a quick one-line reaction from you, Rakesh, and then I'm going to take a break, come back at the 9 o'clock, and then 9 to 10, let's run with full analysis of everything.
There has been moral pedagogy for last 6 decades, but this time Prime Minister conveyed the message that this is a moral action. And not only the economic value of demonetization, but there is a moral value of demonetization in terms of public life, in terms of civil life, culture and economy. Last point, there is a theoretical message also. This is a departure from the conventional neoliberalism where state is on retreat. Now state is acting as a proactive welfare state.
Hang on, I'm going to take you up on that, because when he's sitting and saying we are going to fight a war against corruption, against black money, we're going to, by definition, what the Prime Minister himself started in 2014 by saying is the way we're going to do this is minimum government, maximum governance. When you say that the state is on the ascendant, it's the reverse of that. So I'm going to...
No, here, Vikram...
If you really want to stamp out corruption, you're going to do away with the state, not have a rampant state.
Debureaucratization and the end of the quota permit Raj has been considered as a retreat of the state.
No,
here there is a state. Mr. Khera, let me complete. A state is not a market.
No, but
Manmohan Singh made state synonymous of the market. Here there is a state, there is a market, there is autonomy.
Okay, look, we'll squabble in 10 minutes. We'll squabble in 10 minutes. And quick reaction from everyone else. Professor Arun Kumar, top expert in public finance, growth economics and black money. Your reaction to the speech? What he said to justify demonetization, and then he went into a series of SOPs, which of course...
So we really don't know how long the pain will last. That's what the public...
he didn't say how much money has come back. He didn't give us the data that we were perhaps hoping for.
Also, some assurance that the pain would go away. So it's a damage control exercise. A lot of people are hurting, and these are the people to whom he is giving SOPs, and that is where it's coming. But it will create problems for the budget, because you don't know where the resources are going to come from, how much resource will come from this. So I think the budget making will become a very difficult exercise after all this. This should have come as a part of the budget rather than here.
Okay, Meher.
Okay, 2 very quick things. The first is that I think it's an extraordinary failure of imagination. I mean, demonetization was a success of imagination, a failure maybe in other ways. You come up with a new policy that nobody else has thought of. Here it is, okay, I recognize that demonetization may have caused trouble to particular segments of the population. So I'm going to go back to the old playbook that we've had since Indira Gandhi and use that to try and correct the troubles we've seen so far. And it hasn't worked since Indira Gandhi. He's just doing it again. So this idea that you expand the state, but you are also launching a moral crusade you know, to try and completely make the people
I'm going to
better.
interrupt you because we do have one of the top ministers very crucially involved in economic and commercial thought process. Nirmala Sitharaman joining us. It's a pleasure, ma'am, to have you with us. I just wanted to get from you, ma'am, the overall sense of the thrust of what the Prime Minister was really trying to say today, because as opposed to the November 8th speech, which was big bang, he took a major decision and announced it. Today he was explaining some of the rationale for that, and then there were lots of specific announcements and concessions, SOPs if you like, that were announced, which were almost budget-like in their implications. What to your mind was the major message the Prime Minister was trying to give?
Well, the entire picture of why this had to be done, the black money retrieval or identification, and then taking action over it, and the effort to make sure that the poor and the marginalized sections are not really going to be left without attending to them, largely is the spirit with which the speech is made. The last say 50 days of difficulties which have been faced by the farmers, by the poorest to the poor, who put their limited savings, which was kept in cash form in 500 or 1000 rupees, which have gone into the banks, for which they either swapped or are drawing out in trickles. All that taken on board, here is a response from the Prime Minister.
Right. If you sort of rewind back to November the 8th, you could agree with demonetization, you could disagree with demonetization, and you could certainly say perhaps it could have been implemented better. But as Meher was just saying, nobody will question that it wasn't a major decisive step that was taken, a paradigm shift, if you like. I think what some people will be questioning after hearing the speech today is, where has that paradigm shift really left us? At the end of the day, today, when you're looking back at these 50 days, do you think the war on black money and on the corrupt has actually been decisively won yet, or not won yet? Because some of that, ma'am, has to be backed by data. How much of that money has come back? We still don't know. Of the 15.4 lakh crores, how much has come back? How much of that black money has been laundered? How much is still out there, in people's hands, having been cleaned up in some form or the other? Those are some of the questions we are waiting to hear answers to also.
Yes, you will get answers for them as and when the data is going to be released by the Reserve Bank about the cash which has been come into the banks, and the banks also identifying which of those are consistent or which are reconcilable with the person's declared known income and so on. So that exercise will continue, just as the question that you asked, is this fight about black money, is the story complete? The fight against black money, the story is not complete. I don't think we have ended it because the 50th day is over. The fight will continue, and that is something which is constantly being monitored even by the SIT. So I think we are putting a lot of things together which I think we have built up for ourselves, saying, oh right, on the 50th day, the Prime Minister is going to come and say how much of this money which has come into the account is now white and which is not white. That's not going to be done by the government. Reserve Bank and the banks themselves will have to slowly and steadily, once they reconcile everything, will gradually release the figures. But I think the emphasis here is that the government recognizes the hardship that the poorest of the poor went through, and if there is anything that he can do to ameliorate that difficulty that the people put up with, and literally believed, and I'm happy they believed, that if there is got to be a major measure to be taken against black money, it is only going to be possible, and they had clearly indicated confidence in the Prime Minister.
So if I could just ask you, I mean, I'm just taking you back to some of the things the Prime Minister said at the beginning, and when he was talking about Shuddhikaran Yagna, he says, people have come forward, they have made sacrifices, they made major sacrifices, and they've done it for a good cause, because the honest don't like the fact that there's so much dishonesty around them. When you look at whatever data has been coming through and the anecdotal evidence of these last 50 days, are you in any way disappointed by the extent to which some of the crooks and some of the unscrupulous people seem to have been able to launder their money? We keep on hearing reports of, some connivance, people laundering their money, raids are happening, people have been able to get out money. And the reason I'm asking this, because the sacrifice that the people of this country have made in the last 50 days would get nullified to some extent if the real crooks have been able to launder their money and get away. They'll be disappointed then.
You have seen that never before have we in this country heard of concerted action being taken in terms of information-based raids. And everything that has been reported about how even the new 2,000 rupee notes have been hoarded. Some very unethical bank managers have gone cahoots with people and swapped what has actually got to reach the people with their friends or with whoever. So these are kind of steps which the government has been repeatedly saying that there's enough currency and that is reaching people. Unfortunately, it didn't in some areas. And on that, the government was not sitting and watching. It literally went behind people who hoarded the new currency, showed openly how this government's commitment is. So, on the one hand, I want to reiterate that the government was telling the people the situation and every day was reacting to the developments in the ground. But at the same time, equally, went after people who were really taking away the money which was meant for the people, and action showed how much was confiscated. Action is definitely being also further taken up as to why this happened, who were the people who were in cahoots. So, yes, it has been explained and the government's response.
Okay, we'll wait for action on that. But again, just taking some of the themes the Prime Minister said, he correctly questioned the fact that so few people pay taxes. And it is a shame. He's right when he says that only 24 lakh people say that they have an income of more than 10 lakh rupees. And it's a bizarre number. People should be questioning that and should be feeling angry about it. He also said that the thesis should be punish the corrupt, but help those who are honest. Now, one of the factors that comes to mind is with what seems to be happening today. Yes, a lot more data is being covered, but to some extent, it's almost seeming as if you're returning to a slightly more intrusive government, a lot more checking, a much stronger, forceful government machinery will have to be utilized to make sure everyone is toeing the line. That's not necessarily something that's always worked, because sometimes in that process, it's the innocent who get harassed and questioned and harassed by the tax authorities. The crooks can pay bribes and get away. So sometimes having more powers given to government officials increases corruption instead of decreasing it, as you well know.
I like the way you put it, to add to the view of certain sections which would like to believe that this government has become more intrusive than the governments earlier. Not at all. The laws are all the same. The existing laws are being used to clearly say those wrongdoers will have to be pursued and questioned. Repeatedly, this government, much before the demonetization exercise happened, had very clearly said that there is now a greater mechanized, or let us say digital way of recognizing large chunks of cash coming into account and then moving out of account. Nowadays, these have become part of even an international agreement. Even during the UPA regime, many of us had spoken about why it is important that certain accounts, large payments which are coming in and going out, will have to be monitored. It is part of an international commitment, and all governments are going to do that. So there is no newer instrument that this government has given itself to say, I'm going to probe. No, there are, in fact, some of us will have to visit the facility the Income Tax Department has in Bangalore, whereby there is, without human interface, possible to track huge chunks of credits or withdrawals being made from accounts, and based on that, the income tax authorities are going to question. So it is not as if it is going to be the old license Raj or inspection Raj. People are just going to be entering into your house and say, come on with the records. That's not going to happen. It's far more digitized, human interface is minimized, and question is going to be only if there is something to be asked.
Okay,
so
you're saying
I
instead
would
of an
in fact
inspector,
appeal
Raj,
to media.
You're saying instead of an inspector Raj, essentially now that the money which has been which is in the banks is not anonymous anymore, you will use technology and digital means to try and figure out who's actually evading tax. Is that a fair way of summarizing what you're saying?
Who's actually got to be questioned?
All right, fair enough. Let me now come to the disruption, because yes, there's been a period of disruption. The Prime Minister said we've given instructions, we're going to try and bring things back to normalcy as soon as possible. Now, look, you can always be wise in hindsight, I will grant you that. But having said that, there are questions about the implementation in the way that all of this was done. For example, the simple question of why more notes were not printed before this decision was taken. If, for example, you had printed 5 lakh or 6 lakh crores worth of 500 rupee notes before you took the decision to demonetize, you could have remonetized within a week or two and a lot of the disruption would not have happened. So do you think there are things that could have been done much better when it comes to the implementation of this entire scheme?
Well, as you said, a lot of things can be always, with the benefit of hindsight spoken. And I wouldn't want to reject such critiquing of the government's major initiative that has been taken from November 8th. But the fact remains that the element of secrecy which was important here, and you might think I'm bringing in an harangued argument, but it is an important argument. You really can't be completely prepared with the number of notes that you would want because you're withdrawing 86% of the currency, and therefore in order to be able to fill it all up, keep your trunk chest ready to match what you're going to withdraw is probably going to be impractical. And with the level of confidentiality that you maintain, you had to go a certain distance and not any further. And second, I think the problem now, with the benefit of hindsight, I'll just very quickly conclude, because I can see that you're trying to want to say something. With the benefit of hindsight, let's not forget that the quantum of 2,000 rupees note, I'm taking this as an example, which have been confiscated because that which had to go to the public didn't go, that also aggravated the inadequate supply of cash. So I think there is the intent of the government, preparedness of the government to an extent, and in order that that reach efficiently, the systems and the line of command which was in place had certain hurdles, which you couldn't have really, unless you were cynical about the Indian public, you couldn't have really said every bank, if one distributes, the other would have an element which will siphon off. So you really can't, unless you're going to be cynical about it.
You should never underestimate the ability of Indian jugaad to try and find ways around all that's happening. But just to take you up on that secrecy point, because this is in a sense the crux of it, that's the crux of the hardship. Theoretically, all the Reserve Bank of India or the government should have done is said, we are printing new 500 rupee notes with a new design. We've done a design competition, pink notes, Mangalyan on it, and it's being printed. Even if it had got out, no one would have thought about it because it's being printed. You'd have had the notes printed, kept in a warehouse, and you could have remonetized. Not gone into 2,000 rupee notes at all because it's been tough to get change for that. That's a logical, simple other way of having done this.
Well, okay, now I think just on the currency, designing, the timing of printing, the bill and the denomination of the bill, all of us could have a separate debate. But today the context of the Prime Minister's speech and the sum and substance of the spirit behind the demonetization, I think cannot be lost out. The people of India have stood by the Prime Minister, and the measures with the intention of coming out, literally, you may have any number of people say, sorry for my poor Hindi, but what Khuda Pahad, Nikla Chuhia can be said any number of times. But the opportunity that Government of India has had over several decades was never utilized by any government. We kept adding to the higher denomination to the extent that it reached 86%. And then now we are saying, how can this government take an action? Although we are all committed to, addressing the issue of black money. So we really can't go on nuancing this debate, losing track of the original objective.
Okay. Last question, Nirmala ji, before I allow you to go. As you said, the actual numbers will only be known once the RBI releases the data, and we are waiting to hear it. Would you be deeply disappointed, and would you say that the entire exercise has lost some of its punch, if it actually turns out that of those 15.4 lakh crores of old notes that were banned on the 8th of November, a vast majority of that has come back into the system. Because that shows either there was no black money to start with, or that people were able to successfully launder their money. So when that actual number comes back...
Well, I don't think.
No? I mean, it's always a third possibility is that they'll declare it under the amnesty scheme. There is a third possibility, and that again is based on data that we'll get. But are you... so you
That's
would not,
right.
So that's what you will then assume. If
Because
the
I think, no, Vikram, I think to be fair, we have to see how much of the money which has come into the banks is answering the reasonable question of how much is it commensurate with your income. You had an IDS, which is income declaration scheme, till September 30th. For all those extraordinary quantum of money which has come into the account, obvious question will be, was it part of the declaration? Was it not? And if it was not, are you able to reconcile with what you declared then, and this was included, was not included, will have to be explained by everybody who's put that kind of huge amounts into their accounts. So there is an exercise which has got to be completed. And I think in the national interest, I will only appeal for us to be not really waiting for that vicarious day, for that day, for having a vicarious pleasure of, this government lost this game. Not at all. I think this has been a very good exercise in getting all those monies which were sitting somewhere, idling, now into the system. If it is justified that it is a genuine income, it's very well for the person who's put it in. If he is not able to, he is going to be given the option of pay the penalty and, lock up a certain portion of it for the next 4-5 years, and you're able to reconcile. Otherwise, we know how much has literally been what can be straight away said as black money. So I think it is a very, very technical exercise. I don't think we should be hasty in concluding, saying, oh my God, this government is going to face difficulty because it didn't succeed. What is success? What is failure in this?
All right.
It is a major exercise.
All right. So let me just ask you, you probably have a closer, finger on the pulse. How soon would you estimate it will be before we can say normalcy has been restored? Maybe it will help people celebrate their New Year's this evening, New Year's Eve, a little better, if they can actually get some sense of how long it is going to be before life is fully normal again. What's your guess?
Well, I think doubling the ceiling itself, per day withdrawal itself has already commenced. The announcement has been made. From tomorrow you can withdraw about 4,500 in the place of 2,000. The easing out is happening. I'm sure sooner all the complete normalcy will be restored, because the Prime Minister also in his speech today mentioned that. He said very clearly that I will ensure that cash will go to particularly Dur-Daraz Ilaka and also to the rural areas.
Yeah, but the 24,000 limit still remains for the moment. The 24,000 cap for withdrawal per week still remains.
It is not to, Vikram, but let's understand this. Yeah. It is not to deny somebody their legitimate money, which is what is in the account, I presume, largely.
Yeah.
It is more because if money is reaching in a certain proportion to the banks, we do not want people, the first 4 people, to draw the whole lot, because they are entitled to take their money. Nobody is questioning that. Whatever they have in their account, they have every right to withdraw. But it's more from the point of view of as many people can get whatever the bank receives. And therefore the limitation, it is not to curtail one's right. It's more, given the situation, can we please be a bit more reasonable in saying more people get the currency rather than one person take it all out because he's got the right to.
All right, Nirmala Sitharaman, thank you so much for joining us, shedding light on the Prime Minister's speech and also on the process of demonetization. And yes, let's hope that normalcy does return. So, Happy New Year to you, and
thank you.
Let's hope that we get normalcy as soon as possible.